Well, good morning and welcome to Deepwater Baptist Church. Recently I overheard someone asking this question: where is God when you need him? Where is God when you need him? It is a question I've heard people ask quite frequently, particularly when they've been in difficult circumstances, and maybe over the past year. It's a question which has been asked many times by many people. How would you answer a question like that? Is it okay even to ask such a question? Why would someone even feel the need to ask, where is God when you need him? So I was thinking, was the person asking the question someone who even believed God exists? And if they did believe, what were they expecting God to do anyway? The way I thought I heard the words being spoken suggested that this was someone who perhaps had doubts about whether God really exists or had any relevance for their life. If God does exist, why isn't he here helping me here and now when I think I need it? It was as if to say, well, God can't be there, or he can't care about me, or he wouldn't allow this situation in my life to happen. Most of the time I don't feel the need for God, but now when I do, it seems as if he can't do anything about it. Is that fair? Have you ever met anyone who questions things like that? Maybe you've even said similar things yourself sometimes. So then, where is God when you need him? In the Psalms, we often read them and enjoy all the poetry of praise which helps us to worship God. But would it surprise you to know that in many of the Psalms, the writer asks questions like, where is God when you need him? Psalm 88, for instance, in verses 13 and 14, says this: But I cry to you for help, O Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Why, O Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? And in Psalm 44, verses 23 to 26, Awake, O Lord, why do you sleep? Rouse yourself. Do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression? In other words, the psalmist is saying, where are you, God, when I need you? It is okay to tell God exactly how we're feeling, especially when we're feeling distant from him or going through difficulties. Indeed, I would recommend that you do that, rather than pretending that everything is all right. But what is maybe less okay to ask is the sort of attitude which says, God, I demand you to be here now, sorting out this problem for me, just because we find ourselves in a situation that's outside our control and difficult, when for the rest of our lives, when things are going well, we perhaps don't always acknowledge God's existence or give him enough thanks for the blessings he gives us. We often talk about and describe Jesus as being the servant king. He's not our servant or our slave in that sense. He is humble to serve us, to wash our feet as he did the disciples. But he's also God who deserves our worship. He's not meant to be our plaything, just at our beck and call, to use whenever we feel like it for our own satisfaction. Now that's hardly fair, or showing love towards God. But of course, that said, God can still even act in those situations if he chooses, and does forgive everyone. So back to the question, where is God when you need him? Well, if we ever do get that question from someone, and someone perhaps who's using it to undermine our own faith, then we're in good company. That's exactly what some people shouted at Jesus when he was on the cross. In Matthew 27 and verses 41 and 42, we read this: "In the same way the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. He saved others, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we'll believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him." In other words, they were saying to Jesus, "Where's your God now, Jesus, when you really need him?" If we find ourselves in trouble, illness, or whatever difficulty, and perhaps discuss it with friends who are not believers, what's our reaction if they say to us, "So where's your God when you need him?" There is an underlying assumption here that if God exists and loves us, then life's always going to be the proverbial bed of roses. Bad things can't happen if you're a Christian, they say. Yes, of course, God has promised us blessing and peace and love and all those warm and furry things. But the Bible that I've read makes no mention anywhere that life is always smooth running. In fact, what I hear Jesus say more often is nearly the total opposite. We are warned to expect challenges, temptations, difficulties, conflict, and so on. But the promise is that God will be with us through all those hard things, even if we do not feel it or see it. There are times when we may feel distant from God, but that does not deny his existence. Let's just go back to the Gospels and remind ourselves of what God is like as revealed in the person of Jesus. Now, Jesus didn't necessarily do or say what the people expected or wanted him to do. Remember, on Palm Sunday, he came with humility on a donkey and with an authority which the leaders of the day found hard to accept or understand. He did not behave in the way many wanted him to. Maybe that's why we sometimes question where God is. Perhaps God is not doing exactly what we want him to, so we think he's absent from duty. We want God to do it in our way, not his. We want to choose the tune that God should dance to. Maybe we think he's not there in a situation because we simply do not recognise him, because he's not conforming to our expectations. The temptation is that we only allow ourselves to become aware of God's presence when he's going with us the way we want to go. When he challenges our way, we often leave him out of the picture and just claim he's not there. But then, remarkably, when we've wandered off, like the one sheep from the flock, we know that he goes after us to find us again. Sometimes, maybe like the brother of the prodigal son, we feel that's unfair. We deserve more from God. Why is he blessing that sinner person when I'm his faithful follower? Well, that's not the way God thinks. I want to ask the question another way. When do you need God? When do you need God? Of course, the pat answer is always. But apart from that cliche, I don't think we can talk about our relationship with God in the same way maybe as some hobby we enjoy or some occasional friendship we pick up from time to time. Jesus presents us with a stark choice. Either what he claimed and taught is true, and he deserves our allegiance as disciples, or else he's the biggest liar and fraud ever to walk this earth. He claimed to be the Son of God. He claimed he rose from the dead. Well, either that's true or it's not. And if it's true, it's the most remarkable thing that's ever happened and deserves our allegiance in every possible way, or it's the biggest con trick that's ever been performed on earth, and we should have nothing to do with it. Was Jesus true, or was he a liar? Now this week we have various elections coming up around the country. For the London Mayor, the London Assembly, Scotland and Wales, they're electing their parliaments, local councils. All this is going on. And we see the party broadcasts on television. We've had loads of leaflets pushed through our door. But do we trust our politicians? Do we believe everything they say? Aren't they all charlatans and corrupt and full of sleaze we keep hearing on the news and in the papers? Can you believe anything they say? But of course we use our wisdom, our experience to sift through all the things they claim they'll do. We will vote for the one whom we trust the most to deliver what we think is right. But we're not so naive as to think that absolutely all they say is true, or all their promises will be fulfilled. But our decision about Jesus has to be much more clear-cut than that. You cannot sit on the fence. You cannot have a part belief. Either Jesus spoke the truth and was the Son of God, or he was a liar. It's such a major claim. You either have to accept it or reject it. We cannot just cherry pick the bits of Jesus' teaching we like and ignore the rest as being nonsense, because that would undermine his credibility completely. Either all Jesus said and promised is true, or he's a complete waste of space. What do you say? He demands an all or nothing response. So in our lives, either we need him in every aspect, or we don't need him at all. We either need him in the good times and the bad times, or leave him alone. We can't just turn to him and expect him to be specially present in those bad times when we can't cope in our own strength. Think too about the widow that Jesus told about, who didn't have much money but put 2 small coins in the temple treasury. And Jesus said she put in far more than the rich man, who put in far much more money, but far less of his wealth. She gave her all. They only gave what they felt they could spare. So when do we feel we need God? Do we say all in? Everything, in every way? Or is it just in those selected parts of our life that we allow him access, the bits of our lives we can spare, like our loose change? When do we need God? I guess another reason sometimes we don't deal with this question about where God is when you need him is that when we do know he's present and close, we just don't acknowledge it enough or share it with others. Do we gossip about the things we know God's done? Do we give him the credit for stuff? Do we intentionally talk about the times we know God is there with us, so that others realise God is around and active in every routine part of our lives? Or do we get a bit afraid like Peter did when he denied Jesus 3 times publicly, even when he knew it was wrong to do so? I think this is one of the most powerful ways of dealing with the question of where God is when we need him. We need to demonstrate that he's always there, even when some might say he's not needed. And maybe, just maybe, the people asking that question may discover he's there for them too. Ultimately, I think this is a perfectly reasonable question to ask. Where is God when you need him? And if it's a question that's on your lips today, be encouraged that God is there if you seek him. He cares and loves for you more than you can imagine. Ask him to reveal himself to you. Try to spend quiet time waiting for him. He may not reveal himself to you in a situation the way you expected him to or wanted him to. But when we do know God has been particularly close to us, boast about it. Rejoice. Share it. Let others know. And if it's a question that's raised to you from someone you know really is seeking to know the answer, pray that God will give you the right words and actions to enable the person who's seeking God to know that God is there. Now, next week, we're going to be spending some time seeking God's vision for our church family as we begin to move forward out of lockdown. That's a situation where we need to be very aware of God's presence. We certainly need to know what he wants us to be doing. So be assured, he is present with us this morning, will be tomorrow and always, even if we might not feel it. But this week, can I urge all of us to seek his presence more intentionally? Try to find a bit of extra time just to enjoy his company, either in prayer, going for a walk and seeking his presence in the beautiful creation around us, finding a quiet place to be with him. So where is God when you need him? He's right here, waiting to be close to you. Amen. May God bless you this week. Bye-bye.